Ladies and gents, we've got a finals preview for you now. We've got Nick Bam Boylan, we've got Joe Money McCarr. Let's get stuck in. Nick, Mr. Bam, you have got the Miami Heat. What are the keys to them winning this series?
Well, guys, I think there's really 3 points of emphasis that I'm looking at for the Heat to start things off. And really, we saw in the last game where they clinched the series against Boston that Bam Adebayo is really crucial to what the Heat do, really on both ends of the floor. In this series, the Lakers are going to go. I've got a bit of a different roster to throw at Bam compared to the Celtics. So they can play a lot bigger, as we saw in the past series when Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee played a lot more minutes than they did in the previous series against Houston. The Lakers have got that versatility, and it'll be really interesting to see what they throw at Bam, because we saw that Adebayo really had some effectiveness against Tice, particularly in that last game of the series. And when the Celtics went smaller with Grant Williams, we did see Boston have some success there. So it'll be really interesting to see what Frank Vogel does. But one thing that's really key for Bam is that we saw how the Lakers got into Jokic's head a little bit in that series against the Nuggets, got him into early foul trouble and really disrupted Jokic's momentum, and therefore disrupted what the Nuggets could do offensively. Now, while they're completely different players, I do think that both Jokic and Adebayo serve as real offensive momentum carriers for their team. Adebayo is really that energy and physicality for the Heat, particularly inside when they're with the lineup they're playing now of sort of a 4-out one situation. So if Bam can get things going aggressively like he did in the previous game, where that's scoring in the paint, hitting that mid-range jumper, but also opening things up for other players. We saw how effective the pick and roll is with Goran Dragic, and Dragic is going to have significantly, lower quality perimeter defenders looking after him compared to in the previous series. We had Marcus Smart draped all over him at times, making things really hard for the Dragon. Bam can really help things going both ways, and back when the Lakers beat the Heat in both of their previous games in the regular season, we have to keep in mind that both of those games were in 2019, where the Heat looked totally different as a roster. Myers Leonard was still starting at the 5. Jay Crowder and Andre Iguodala weren't even on the roster yet. Spoelstra's gone with a completely different sort of look in the bubble and through the playoffs with a much more mobile and smaller lineup, both used to emphasize the Heat's three-point shooting, which I'll get into, but also Bam's effectiveness. In those games when the Lakers did match up with the Heat, Bam spent time on AD. Davis scored 15 points on 14 shots with no turnovers, and the Lakers scored on 1.23 points per possession. Now, on the other end of things, Bam didn't score on AD. He had 2 turnovers, and Miami's only scored 0.8 points per possession. So, as I said, we don't know where the lineup's going to match up, if they are going to play on each other at all for great stages. But if the lineup's really, if Spoelstra keeps going with Bam at the 5, and we're going to see a lot more of Davis on Bam, and Bam needs to show that, I guess, he's grown since those 2 games, and he can give Davis some fits on both ends of the floor. Now, the other thing that's really important for Miami is their three-point shooting. I think everybody knows that when they're shooting well, they're really hard to stop. And Miami were the second most accurate shooting team from deep, with 37.9% on 35.4 attempts per game, and that just trailed the Utah Jazz by a hair. With guys like Goran Dragic, Tyler Hero, the rookie who's been fantastic, and Jay Crowder, although he's been a little bit cold from downtown of late, he has shown that ability to knock down the 3 with some great quality and consistency earlier in the bubble and earlier in the playoffs. And then, of course, we can't talk about three-point shooting without talking about Duncan Robinson. Now, the undrafted player out of Michigan, he currently, this is where things start to get crazy, because we know how good a shooter he is at the moment, but these are historic numbers that he's putting up. He currently has the best catch-and-shoot three-point percentage over regular season and playoffs with a minimum of 500 attempts. He's drilling his catch-and-shoot attempts from deep at 45.6%. Now, the rest of the top 5 shooting marks are made up of 3 seasons from Klay Thompson and 1 season from Steph Curry. So it puts him in incredible company and shows you exactly how good Robinson is at shooting the basketball. Not only that, I think because the comparison sometimes a lot of people are making, I think, is the fair one, is to Klay Thompson, because it's their effectiveness in moving without the ball and constantly being a threat without the ball in their hands. Duncan has that lightning quick release, which means that he doesn't need too much space at all. And the fact that he keeps running has been recorded really because he has the sixth most miles run in the NBA this season, which shows that he's always on the move, looking to get open, and he only needs a sliver of room to get that shot. And talking about Miami's, I guess, success as a three-point shooting team and how much it plays into when they win games, they're 8-0 when they shoot better from 37% from deep, and they're 18-1 when they make 13 or more threes. Now, we talk about, Jack says it's a make or miss league, and it's true. And Miami can live and die by the three sometimes, as we saw in some poor performances through the postseason. When they do lose games, it's because they have some pretty average shooting nights. But when they're clicking from all cylinders on deep and you get all those shooters, putting the ball in from deep, they're hard to stop. And my third and last point for the Heat that I wanted to talk about, particularly coming off such an excellent game against the Celtics to clinch the series, is the veteran Andre Iguodala. I think his presence is crucial for this Miami team. And it's bereft of any finals experience outside of Udonis Haslem, who we won't really see who won't see the floor unless it's some junk time minutes, and it might be celebrating a championship really. Iggy's 15 points was really massive. Hit all his threes. We had a perfect shooting night from the floor. You take that as a Heat fan. That's really important if he's knocking down his threes. But what else he's bringing to the table really is his playmaking and his cool-headedness under pressure. As I said, it's a pretty inexperienced Miami team. That experience in going to the finals 6 years in a row is going to be massive. And then also, exactly how much can he help defend LeBron James? Obviously, we're going to see a lot of Jimmy Butler on him. Jay Crowder's going to get some minutes on LeBron as well. But if he's able to help, like he did when he won that Finals MVP trophy back in 2015, I think that's going to be really helpful to the Heat to allow Butler to get a little bit of reprieve on that end so he can, focus on scoring the ball as well and helping Miami on the offensive end. And I guess segueing into what Joe's going to talk about with the Lakers, I guess I'm always of the school of thought that trying to turn LeBron more into a scorer is a beneficial thing. If he averages 40 points for the series, but guys like KCP, Markieff Morris, Danny Green, Caruso, Kuzma, these sort of guys, if they don't get going, I think it's going to be a lot harder for the Lakers. Joe, what are your thoughts on, trying to stop LeBron and what's the best way to go about it?
So in terms of the Lakers, a lot of the ideas that you just touched on are what I was going to touch on too. So the first point of emphasis, and the most important in my opinion, you need to get the supporting cast involved. This is the reason why many were skeptical about the Lakers. There was this huge question mark coming into the season, like, okay, we know how good LeBron and Anthony Davis are, but who is their third option? Who is their consistent third option? Who's going to show up and be that third leading scorer come playoff time? And we've seen so far, they've done a decent job at finding that third guy, and it's usually a different person every night. But whether it's Rondo, Dwight, Caruso, Markieff Morris, Kuzma, it's just a nice team effort that they're showing that we really didn't think we'd see originally. So Miami knows they have their hands cut out for them, but if they can stop that supporting cast, then you're already putting a lot more pressure on LeBron and AD to pretty much play perfect, because they already have to play extremely well just to keep themselves in games, especially this deep into the playoffs. But if guys, I'm telling you, if Danny Green is making his open looks, if Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is making them, if Rondo is doing his thing and running the second unit, facilitating for these other guys, that is a very difficult team to stop. In terms of my second point of emphasis, it also touches on your point, Nick. They need to guard the perimeter well. If you're the Lakers, you need to guard Miami on the perimeter super well. As we've seen from Miami so far, shooters galore. Duncan Robinson, as you said, you just touched on, easily one of the greatest shooters in the league. Tyler Hero, we know how confident and how sweet of a shooting stroke he has. Jay Crowder, a little inconsistent, but we've seen in the earlier rounds, like you said, that he's very capable. Goran Dragic could score from out there, Jimmy Butler. So this Heat team has a lot of options from downtown, and it seems as if they just get whatever they want from downtown. Like, they always know how to create a little bit of space, and if nothing's falling for them, they'll take a three-pointer off like a Duncan Robinson screen, and it doesn't even seem like a bad shot. Like, I don't know, but when I watch the games, every shot I see Duncan Robinson take, even if he misses them, I say in my mind, I'm like, that's not a bad shot. Like, keep shooting that. So if I'm the Lakers, I really need to put an emphasis on perimeter defense, and this is where guys like Danny Green, Rondo, Caruso, they're going to come in handy. And in my opinion, this is a series they're really, for that reason, guarding the perimeter, they're really going to miss Avery Bradley. But it's got to be a team effort. They got to step up as a group. And, the mentality goes next man up, and we got to see what they could do. And in terms of my last and third point of view, as you mentioned, Bam Adebayo has been terrific for the Heat. So the Lakers need to do a great job at keeping him off the glass. We know his emergence has really come all around in terms of being a playmaker, in terms of running the floor, in terms of finishing lobs, in terms of that little pick and pop jump shot he's developed. But if I'm the Lakers, I need to keep Bam Adebayo off the glass. Now, we know the Lakers have huge bodies in their lineup. Anthony Davis, Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, should they decide to elect to play him. Even LeBron and Markieff Morris, who play forward positions, but I would say are larger for their size. They need to do a great job at boxing out and making sure Adebayo isn't wreaking havoc on the glass and getting the Heat extra possessions. And if they can really do all of this well, I can really see the Lakers taking home the championship.
I guess we'll get straight to the prediction.